I was just a systems engineer on a well-functioning spacecraft coming home. And so, sure, I had work to do, but not nearly as pressing as before. And we were oriented such that we were rotating to keep thermal balance on the spacecraft, and oriented in such a way that every 2 minutes, the Earth, the Moon, the Sun, and a 360-degree panorama of the heavens appeared in the cabin window. And that was awesome. It was an overwhelming experience. And we have to realize that in space, without the intervening atmosphere, the heavens are 10 times as bright, stars 10 times as numerous, because there's no atmosphere to block the light. And this experience was overwhelming, in that suddenly I realized from my studies in astronomy that the molecules of my body and the molecules in the body of the spacecraft and my partners were prototyped or manufactured in an ancient generation of stars. And instead of intellectual knowledge, it was a visceral experience, a visceral knowing, accompanied by an ecstasy. And I'd never had such an experience, and I didn't really know what it was. And this experience continued for 3 days coming home whenever I got a chance to look at the heavens. And after I came back, I was so profoundly, not concerned, I was amazed by this experience, that I started looking in the science literature and found nothing to explain it, and in the religious literature and found nothing. And I appealed to professors over at a nearby university, at Rice University, to see if they could help me find in the literature anything that would help describe this experience. And they came back a couple of weeks later with the idea of that they found in the Sanskrit called samadhi, or salvakapa samadhi. In particular, that means you see things in their separateness, but experience them viscerally and emotionally as a unity, a oneness, and accompanied with an ecstasy. And I said, yes, that's the type of experience. And then I went on to research over a period of time other traditions and different cultures. And of course, you find in the Greek the metanoia experience, and you find in the Zen satori, and in other traditions they call it different things, but it's the same type of transcendent experience of where you're catapulted out of one state of being into this state of ecstasy and bliss, where you realize everything is totally interconnected. And that was the essence of that experience. Since we were the first generation of spacefarers from Earth, that the questions human had been asking for all time about who am I, where did I come from, what's my relationship to the cosmos, that now that we were the first generation of spacefarers, maybe we really needed to be asking that question all over again. And my answer to that was to form the Institute of Noetic Sciences and to use the tools of science to understand consciousness, because consciousness had not been a proper subject in science for 400 years. And I thought now that we had quantum science perhaps, and spacefaring, that perhaps we ought to readdress that subject. And that was the, that was the basis of starting Noetics. The conclusions concerning consciousness are still incomplete, but it's clearly rooted in the quantum nature of things. And for the last 80 years of the 20th century, the physicists have insisted that quantum mechanics only pertained to subatomic matter, and they continue to adhere to the Cartesian dualism that said body, mind, physicality, spirituality are different realms of reality that don't interact. And it turned out to be dead wrong. That's just not the case. That the quantum entanglement phenomena causes effects at all scale sizes of nature, not just a subatomic realm. Well, the greatest challenge for now in this beginning of the 21st century is to move toward conditions that will allow civilization to sustain itself, because we're rapidly using up all the non-renewable resources. Our population's consumption is beyond anything that the planet can sustain for a long period, and we have to learn to rethink this and to change our lifestyles in order to appropriately continue to exist on this planet. And furthermore, we must learn to curb our tendencies for war, because we've invented such awesome weaponry that if we really use it against each other, in due course, we will end all life on Earth with atomic weaponry. And if we want to exist, we can't afford to do that. Well, we don't know nearly all we would like to know, but certainly life in the universe seems to be ubiquitous. The notion that we are alone in the universe is clearly absurd, particularly when we, with the modern Hubble telescope pictures, we start to see the vastness of the universe and the vast galaxies and galactic clusters filling all of space that we can observe, far beyond anything we've imagined before having those pictures. And so it puts a new impetus on the smallness of our little galaxy and our little solar system as just a tiny little speck of sand in the greatness of all that's around us. But the likelihood that we're the only living substance in all of this is absolutely absurd. Well, my opinion is based upon primarily not my personal experience, because I don't have any personal first-hand UFO experience. Only the fact that I grew up in Roswell, New Mexico, which was the site of presumed alien crash in 1947, and which, from what I call the testimony of the old-timers who were there and who had been hushed up by government authority, military authority, almost on pain of death at the time, and who had harbored their knowledge quietly for years, and when I came back from the moon and I was a local boy, they considered me safe enough to tell their story to, that they were a part of the recovery effort and the observer of the so-called Roswell crash, and that they knew for sure that it was an alien craft. And subsequent sightings, subsequent evidence has reaffirmed all of that we are being visited and have been visited by alien spacecraft and alien beings. And our governments around the world have covered it up, but only recently other governments have started to open their files, except the United States has still not started opening its files. But most of the major countries in Europe, South America, that have these files, and in Mexico, well, Belgium, France, Brazil, and Argentina, and Mexico have opened their files, and the United States has not. And that's what much of our effort now is all about, is to get these files of the United States opened up for public inspection. There was utterly no discussion of NASA, in NASA while I was there, or in my presence, about UFOs, the phenomenon, or any events that seems to be prevalent in other parts of the government. That I know of none with NASA itself.
Because there have been rumors that some of the former astronauts have kind of come forth with information that they have seen or that they know of sightings.
Well, there are some astronauts that had experiences, and those I have talked to up to the Apollo program, those experiences that they had were pre-NASA. They were during their Air Force careers, while they were either being vectored to chase UFOs, or in the case of Gordon Cooper, while he was at Edwards Air Force Base, observed one landing in the premises. And so those stories they have told. But I know of no stories up to the Apollo program of astronauts having encounters in space of any sort.
Because this is of course, the big question. I mean, when some of our researchers, our ufologists now say that there is something going on all the time around us, and there's thousands of sightings, and NASA seems to, well, know nothing about it, or
Well, no, officially, NASA knows nothing about it because that's not their mission. And I suspect that during the shuttle program, not the Apollo program, but we were talking about going to the moon. But I do understand that from some of the shuttle astronauts, there has been some incidents. I am not versed in those incidents, but I have talked with virtually all of the Apollo astronauts, and in space we have nothing to report. Well, it's my hope that we open this whole issue up, and as I have said frequently, we're at a point in history where we have to become a part of the neighborhood of inhabited planets, rather than like a neighborhood of a community, which we have not even acknowledged that community exists up until this point.
But what will it take for the national governments, and especially the American government, to come to a point of disclosure?
It would take a real emphasis and effort on the part of the citizenry to accept these phenomena and start to move out in a new way. And we talk about that as paradigm shift, a change in thinking, and that has to take place here.
You have been one of the four front runners now in this campaign, so to say, over the last years. And how have you been met among both the public and the media, and also your colleagues?
Well, the public and the people I've talked to have been receptive. As we both know, the media has not been receptive up until now. But in the last year or so, it seems to have markedly changed. Whether that was a one-time event remains to be seen. But the media interest has changed in 2008 and now into 2009 quite differently than it was before that. Well, for some of us who have been studying the phenomenon, we consider quantum fluctuations in the zero-point energy field, which is all space, as the source, the ground of being, the source of all existence, and that matter has arisen from that. And if there was a Big Bang, it had to come out of the zero-point field. The question of how did the Big Bang arise is a valid question. But most of us now are thinking, that have studied the phenomenon, that we're really dealing with constant creation of matter from the zero-point field, as opposed to a Big Bang. Now that may take another decade or two to validate, or it may be invalidated. But at the moment, the Big Bang seems to me to be very suspect as a source of all being.
So what science now defines as dark energy or dark matter, it might be something...
Some of us postulate that it could very well be proto-matter coming into being. And it's too early to... We haven't proved that or validated that with science yet. But it's my thought that that is where this is going, that maybe we will be able to do that in the next decade or so.